Welcome back, everyone. Today we're making a super simple fold over messenger bag. This bag measures in at 14 by 12 folded over and 14 by 14 unfolded, giving you plenty of space for all your daily essentials. It includes one large zipper pocket, 2 pockets on the inside, 2 pockets on the outside, and a ton of strap loops to clip all your items to. And this project is on the easier side, so if you are new to sewing, you should have no problem following the easy step-by-step tutorial. With all that being said, don't forget to grab the printable PDF pattern and let's get started. Getting started with supplies, you'll need a half yard for your main fabric, and I recommend using a canvas, denim, or twill. These are all very durable fabrics and they're easy to work with. I'm actually going to be using upholstery fabric. It's a little bit more difficult to work with, so if you do go this route, just make sure you know the stretch of your fabric. But like always, use whatever fabric that really is going to make your design come together. You'll need a half yard for your secondary fabric, and I recommend using something lightweight because once you start stacking these layers together, it can get pretty bulky. I'm going to be using a nylon based material. I like using the nylon on the inside of the bag because it's very lightweight and it's also easy to move things in and out of the bag. Since this is a simple design, you can actually use the same fabric as the main fabric. You'll need one 15-inch zipper, and you can use any style zipper. I'm going to be cutting mine off of a zipper roll. I found this was a great way to go if you're making a lot of bags. You can cut precise zippers and minimize the waste. You'll need 2 yards of cord. Going along with that cord, you'll need 2 cord stoppers. And these items are going to be used to make the strap. If you plan on making a strap out of different materials, you don't need these items. You'll need 1 yard of 1/2 inch to 1 inch width webbing. This is going to be used for the straps up front. It is optional. If you don't plan on adding the straps, you don't need the webbing. Lastly, you'll need your pattern. The pattern is available at properfitclothing.com. It's super easy to use. All you have to do is download it, print it off, tape it together, and you're ready to go. And before you tape your pattern together, the best thing to do is to cut off the top and one of the side edges. This is going to allow you to overlap the pages for a perfectly aligned pattern. And after you have all your supplies gathered and your pattern printed out, it's time to move into cutting.
And after taping your pattern together, it should look like this. Be sure to check your printer alignment for the best possible results. And from here, we're going to cut on the outside of the black line. And after cutting out all the panels, you should end up with 4 strap loop panels cut out of your main fabric, 2 shoulder panels cut out of your main fabric, 4 pocket panels, 2 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 2 cut out of your main fabric. 4 main panels, 2 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 2 cut out of your main fabric. And lastly, 4 top main panels, 2 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 2 cut out of your main fabric. Moving on to construction, we're going to start by grabbing the pocket panels, lay the panels out with right sides facing up, locate the longest edge, and that's going to be our top edge. Place the right sides together and stitch that top edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After finishing up the stitch, we're going to flip the wrong sides together. We're going to be adding a top stitch to that top edge, so we want to move the layers back and forth so it's perfectly even. Place a few pins to prevent it from moving around and add your top stitch. I'm going to be using an edge presser foot to get the best results. Since this is a more decorative stitch, you can use different styles of stitching or add multiple stitches, so have some fun with it and get creative. Place one of the pocket assemblies off to the side, and using the pattern, we're going to locate the webbing placement guide. Line up the bottom of the pattern with the assembly and chalk out your guides. This step is optional. If you don't want to add the webbing strap loops, you can skip ahead. Or if you want to add more than 2, then you can chalk out more guides. I'm using 3/4 inch width webbing. I found this was a pretty good size to use when you're clipping things to, but you can also go up to 1 inch. Cut 2 strips to fit within the chalked out guide. You can cut them smaller or to custom measurements. You mainly want to make sure that they don't cross over into the seam allowance. Roll the outside edges over, pin them down. Using the pattern, we're going to chalk out the center and then add the rest of the loops. Typically, these are spaced 2 inches apart, but feel free to add as many as you want. And from here, we're going to tack stitch each one of the chalked out guide loops. You'll want to go back and forth a few times to really lock it down, so when you clip items to it, it's not going to rip off the bag. And again, this step is customizable, so if you want to add more than 2 straps or just 1, you can totally do so. But anyways, we can place the pocket assembly off to the side and grab all 4 of our strap loop panels. Separate the panels into 2 sets of 2, make sure the right sides are together, locate the shorter edge, and this is the edge we're going to stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Stitch both sides of the panel and flip the right sides out. Add a pin directly in the center to keep the side edges even. Just like with the pocket panel, we're going to add a top stitch to the outside edges. This panel we're going to be folding directly in the center, so that way the stitching is on the top and bottom. It's going to be used as a loop on the side so we can clip our strap to it. As you can see, my clip is way too small for this size of a strap loop, and everyone's probably going to be using a different size clip, so you're going to want to adjust it to the size that you're using. Or you can shop around and find a clip that works with the size. But it's very easy easy to adjust. Instead of adding the stitch a 1/4 inch away from the top edge, we're just going to take it in closer towards that center. And it's probably easy as just measuring your clip and going from there. Real quick before we move on, this is what my adjusted strap loop panels look like. As you can see, I shortened it so it fits within that clip and it doesn't bunch up. And it's the small details like this that will make your bag look professionally made. But anyways, moving on, grab the main panels. For this step, we're going to be adding the pocket panels to the main fabric and the secondary fabric. So we're going to need one of the main fabric panels and one of the secondary fabric panels. Using the pattern, locate the pocket placement guide, and pretty much all you have to do is line it up on the bottom edge of our main panel. And the pocket panel that has the webbing loops is going to go on the main fabric. So place it on the main fabric main panel with right sides facing up. For the second pocket, we're going to place it on the secondary fabric, and since we used a main fabric and a secondary fabric, you can choose whether you want the main fabric up or the secondary fabric up. I'm flipping mine around so the secondary fabric is facing up. And stitch the outside edge as close as you can to that edge. The goal is to make these layers turn into one solid layer. And essentially this is saving us time in future steps. Using the pattern, locate the pocket divider stitch placement, line the pattern up with the outside edges, and chalk out the pocket divider. This step is optional. If you want just one large pocket, then you can skip ahead. And we're only going to be adding this to the main fabric. So place a secondary assembly off to the side and add your stitch directly down the center. Feel free to stitch directly over the webbing or skip it if you're using a different color thread. And all we did is turn that front pocket into 2 pockets to help keep items organized within these pockets. Once again, using the pattern, we're going to locate the strap loop panel placement guides, grab both of your complete strap loop panels, fold the panels in half and place them within the placement guide. Since you may be using a different size strap loop panel to match your clips, I recommend placing them as close as you can towards the top edge within that placement guide. We mainly don't want them to enter into the seam allowance on that top edge. And simply stitch them down as close as you can to the outside edge. And this will be their permanent placement, so if they're not even across from one another, I recommend dethreading and trying again. But anyways, we can place this assembly off to the side and grab our top main panels. Separate the panels with the right sides facing up, and we only need 2, so place the other 2 off to the side, locate the zipper edge, grab your zipper, and for the size of the zipper, as long as it goes past the outside edges, you're good to go. Place the right side of the zipper to the right side of the main fabric and the right side of the secondary fabric to the wrong side of the zipper, sandwiching the zipper in between both of the layers, and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Flip the wrong sides together, lining up the outside edge, place a few pins. Grab the second set of top main panels and do the same thing on the opposite side of the zipper, sandwiching the zipper in between both of the panels, line up the outside edges, and stitch the top edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to be adding a top stitch on the zipper edge, so we want to keep both of those layers as even as possible on both sides of the zipper. Once you have the layers lined up, add your top stitch to both sides of the zipper. After stitching, double check both sides, make sure all the layers stayed aligned. If you cut your zipper from a zipper roll, the next step is going to be adding your zipper train, and it can be added to either side of the zipper. To keep it out of the way, we're going to slide it to the center of the panel. Separate the main fabric from the secondary fabric with right sides facing up. Slide the assembly to the side and grab your main panels. To start, we only need one of the main fabric panels. Locate the stitch guide at the top of the panel, and this is the edge we're going to be attaching to the top main panel. Place the right sides together, lining up the outside edge, and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Fold the seam allowance so it's pointing towards the zipper, and add your top stitch by stitching directly on top of the seam allowance. By folding the seam allowance in this direction, it's going to help that top panel fold over more naturally. Open the assembly back up, grab your second main fabric panel. Repeat the process by sewing it to the opposite top main panel, separating the secondary fabric from the main fabric, and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Open the assembly back up, locate the seam allowance, and fold it over so it's pointing towards the zipper. And add your top stitch. And typically it's alright to skip top stitching steps, but for this one I highly recommend it because it's going to make that bag fold a little bit easier. Move the main fabric panels to the side so the secondary fabrics are facing up. Grab the remaining 2 main panels, and we're going to do the same thing. Place the right sides together, lining up the outside edge, and for the pocket panel we want to add it on the opposite side of the pocket. Pin the layers together and stitch the top edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Separate the panels so the secondary fabric is pointing up. Just like with the main fabric, we're going to fold the seam allowance so it's pointing towards the zipper and add our top stitch by stitching directly on top of the seam allowance. Before we move on, it's best to check to make sure all the layers are stitched together. From here, we can actually separate the layers so the right sides are facing together for the secondary fabric and the main fabric, and the zipper directly in the center. And there's a few different ways we can sew the zipper. We can point it towards the main fabric or push it back towards the secondary fabric. I'm going to be pushing it towards the main fabric and stitching directly over top. From here, we're going to stitch the outside edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving a 4 to 5 inch gap on the secondary fabric side. And this step is very important because it's going to allow us to pull the right sides out after we finish stitching. It's very important to keep all the layers lined up as you're stitching, or else the bag is going to be offset once you flip the right sides out. So just take your time and try to make that stitch as even as possible. After stitching, double check to make sure all the layers got stitched together. If everything is looking good, locate the opening on the secondary fabric side and flip the right sides out. Before we stuff the secondary fabric into the main fabric, we're going to locate the opening on the secondary fabric side, pinch the opening closed with right side together, and add a stitch. For the best results, I recommend matching the thread color to your fabric color. Slide the secondary fabric past the zipper towards the inside of the main fabric. And just like that, it becomes our lining. You can add snap buttons to the inside of the flap and onto the pocket panels. I'm trying to keep this on the more basic side with less hardware, so I'm going to avoid adding any snaps. But other than that, we can place this bag off to the side and grab our shoulder panels. Separate the panels with wrong sides facing up, roll the little tab over on the side so it's even with the side edge. And from here, we're going to stitch each one of those tabs down just like we're hemming the edge. And once we finish, we're going to place the right sides together and stitch the outside edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, jumping the hemmed edge on both sides. And that will become the opening the cord is fed through. So it's very important you jump that side edge and leave enough room for the size cord you're using. Flip the right sides out, and this can be a little bit trickier since the opening is smaller. Just like in previous steps, we're going to line up the outside edges and add a top stitch. This will become the shoulder pad, so if you want to get creative and add decorative stitches, you can do that as well. After finishing up the top stitch, double check both sides, make sure all the layers are looking good and the top stitch is even. If everything is looking good, we're going to grab the cord. I'm just using a standard paracord. Feel free to use a thicker cord or drawstring. Feed 2 strips of cord into the opening on the side and pull it out the opposite side. I'm using 2 1-yard strands. You can use just one, but the cord I'm using is very thin and I like the look of 2. Move back to the shoulder panel and move the cord so it's directly in the center of that panel. Place a few pins so the cord does not slide around and add a top stitch on both sides of the cord. This is going to create a little pathway so the cord is not sliding around on the inside of that panel. And it also makes it a little bit easier when you're sliding that shoulder panel along that cord to make adjustments. And real quick, since this is a shoulder panel, if you wanted to add foam on the inside, you can for more of a padded feel. If you plan on carrying heavier items, this may be a better route to take. Next, grab your cord stoppers. I'm using a double opening cord stopper. Feed both ends through one of the openings, loop it around, and back through the second opening. Prevent the cord from sliding back out, I'm going to be using cord ends. These are typically used on sweatshirt hoodies, but I found it works really great for this too. Feed both ends into the opening, tie a knot, and then pull the cover back over the knot. The knot will be nice and tight on the inside and prevent it from untying. Add a cord stop and a cord end to the opposite 2 ends of the cord. Grab both of your clips, and you can use any style clip as long as it opens. Slide the clip onto the loop below the cord stopper. Add the clip to the strap loops on the bag. With the strap on the bag, try it on, see how it fits, and you can make any adjustments by pulling the cord through the cord stopper. And you can add more cord or trim the cord to your measurements. Final step is adding branding and zipper pulls. I used little pieces of leather that I attach with double-sided rivets. You can also attach different types of tabs that you can use for keys or accessories. If you are looking to make adjustments to this bag, it's very easy to do. All you have to do is change the width and the height for each of the panels. So if you're looking to make it for your laptop, you're going to want to go 1 to 2 inches past the actual width and height, so that way you can take account the seam allowance. And also, you can use any type of fabric for this project. You can use fur, you can use Sherpa, repurpose upholstery fabric, pretty much anything will work, and I recommend testing it and letting me know how it goes.
And there you have it, your simple messenger bag is complete. Hopefully yours turned out good. If it didn't turn out great the first try, sometimes it does take a few tries to really perfect these techniques. But once you perfected those sewing techniques, you can actually use those in all your sewing projects, taking anything you make to the next level. Like always, I'd love to see what you come up with, so tag me on Instagram at Properfit Clothing, and until then, I'm gonna keep the videos coming at you, so I'll see you next time.